Howdy, folks. Welcome back to Deck Check. We're back with your regularly scheduled programming of me and Ben yapping, going over all of the decks that we were able to find. This week, we actually pulled a bunch of lists off of Twitter that Ben found, which is really, we're trying to spice it up, like we said. We did go ahead and organize them into a bit more cleaner looking list, so it's easier to convey to you guys. Ben might be in front of some of the cards, but we can just tell you what those are. And they're none of the cards that are being blocked by him or anything like crazy or like insane.
Sorry, I got a big forehead.
I mean, I think people would rather look at you than the 2x anybody that's currently lurking behind you. But before we jump into that, just wanted to say thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you guys for sticking around. If you're seeing this early, it's because you're a member, and we appreciate you, and we love you, and we, it's very cool to have you supporting us and everything.
Sir.
And we appreciate it very much so. And if you're seeing this when it's public, we still appreciate you. And thank you for checking us out and sticking around and having a good time if you've been here for a while. If you're new here, think about sticking around. We have lots of cool Digimon content, everything from deck profiles to match play. That's our usual main thing. We have this with Deck Check, where we go over decks that have topped across the regions and everything. And with Unification set coming up with BT-21, we're going to be doing that probably even more than ever. It's going to be really easy for us, which will be nice.
Yeah.
And then loads of other stuff too. So definitely think about sticking around and hitting the subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you like this video, drop a like. It'd be cool to do that. It tells the YouTube algorithm that we're doing the right thing, which we appreciate.
Yes, sir.
So without further ado, enough of me yapping. Let's jump in. I will start us off here. So V Armors, Magnamon X. So there's been a couple of different variants going around for this deck. Namely, probably the most unique one right now is this Omni X variant that we have before us here, where you can see you're running 4 of the new BT-20 Cool Boy, along with 3 of the new BT-20 Omni X and 3 of the new Omeka. The idea is that you basically, because Magnamon's a Royal Knight, Magnamon X is a Royal Knight, all of your evolutions are Royal Knights in this deck, pretty much.
Right.
Cool Boy just gives you extra memory and draws you extra cards whenever you would Digivolve, so it just makes you more efficient at your lines. And on top of that, you also get the added bonus of being able to play out Omeka and doing Omeka's on play to go into Omni X if you're at low security, as sort of like a safety measure late game if things aren't going your way. Fun fact: the list you sent me is actually the list that I inspired my build off of. That was the list that I had initially found.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, so this list that we're showing right here, this is the list that I saw where I discovered this variant, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And it won an event over in JP. I don't have the details up in front of me right now, but it's sick. It's just cool. It's a really, really cool deck. I've changed it a little bit myself to make things a little bit less reliant on the Omni strategy, because it can be a little bit sort of... You have to see, Cool Boy, Omeka, and Omni X all at the same time, right? And you have to hit the requirements for it to really pop off.
Sure.
But you can see the card list here. Everything's pretty standard for V Armors. From playing list myself, I will say the EX1 Vmon feels a bit lackluster sometimes, so you could probably drop that and just go 4-4 on the BT-12 and BT-16. The Magnamons, the way they're split like that, I mean, ST Magna, I think, is undoubtedly, I think we both agree, that card's just cracked. Stripping sources based on number of colors, and the bouncing is so good, especially because they don't have to be the same target. I'm pretty sure people are at least this list, and I think what we'll probably end up doing moving forward towards BT-21, BT-13 Magna is just really good for things like Alpha or Yukin Ace, which is your biggest counter as a Magnamon player. With the minus 15 KDP that lingers over, there's just no way for you to survive it. But you with BT-13 Magna, you can armor purge and then spit out the Vmon when you would leave the battle area, which is good. It helps you kind of keep your board state. And the BT-8 Magna kind of just falls off a little bit, because it's good for early game aggression and unsuspending and everything, but it doesn't do too much outside of that. Nothing that the other ones don't do. Yeah, otherwise pretty standard build. Of course, Blinding Ray is being hit to 1. There's a cool card you can use called Acid Injection. It's from BT-6. It basically trashes your top security card to minus 5 KDP on one of your opponent's Digimon, and it's a 1-cost option. It's yellow. People have been using that to make up for the Blinding Ray, but realistically, honestly, from playing it myself, I don't feel the Blinding Ray hit, really. It doesn't feel super noticeable, which is good. Otherwise, aside from what you see on this list, there's just 2 regular BT-9X anybody that are behind Ben's beautiful face right now. That's the list. That's pretty much it. Otherwise, you're kind of just aiming for consistency. You have the new Jessamon GX Ace is a crazy good card. All your pieces are Royal Knights, so you can tuck those in. You have Search, standard memory setter with Davis. You know, nothing else too crazy. All just really good cards. So it's very reliable. I think that Magnamon X is honestly in a pretty good position. Moving into BT-21, especially with the new Magnamon with DP reduction access now, it'll be good. It'll be cool.
Yeah. No, I agree.
All right.
I think, I mean, I won't spend too much time on it because this isn't like a Magnamon video, but yeah, I mean, I think just to highlight, like, to reinforce your point, right, that this deck with the new Omni X, the Just GX, really has like a more like a backup option, right? Magna X before kind of felt like, well, if I can keep it on board and keep it sticky, great. If I get dealt with, it kind of felt bad because you're kind of stuck building back from scratch in a way. And it kind of feels better now that you have this sort of like defensive, like, okay, well, here's a clapback, you know, here's like a safety button.
You have a defensive that isn't an ace. Which, and that all being said, I think Jessamon GX is probably the best ace for this deck by far. From how it felt with Paladin mode, even from my little bit of testing with Gabubond, everything else, because you don't have as many sources with Gabubond with this deck. You're never building a big stack, right? Jessamon GX Ace is just such good removal as an ace card, and it's also very good aggression when your turn swings back around, especially if you steal turn with it from popping an ace.
If you steal turn with that card, you essentially can pretty much win at that point.
Because you're 9 times out of 10, if you aced into it and then it goes back to your turn, you're probably, when you swing, you're going to trash 2 security and hit for 1 and pop something on your opponent's board. It's a very, very powerful card. It's very, very powerful. On top of that too, like with the defensive stuff in mind too, and this will be the last thing I say. The Omni X also just unlocks another level of aggression for you at your top end, where you could swing, do your checks, and obviously you don't see any Zubagon punch in this version of the build. I personally have fit it into my build with the blinding ray hits as well, just to try and keep that little bit extra aggression and extra DP. But even without it, like, you can swing your 2 checks with Magna, go Omni X, and then still swing for another check and potentially clear board if you have X anybody in sources. He gives you just a whole other means of like board control that you didn't have to the deck, and just that extra aggression, like I said, and being a 16k plus body with potential protection if you activated Magnus protection that turn with raid, piercing, and blocker. It's just nasty. It's really, really nasty.
I agree.
I think that's enough for this deck. We'll move on to the next one. Royal Knights.
Sure thing.
Benny Bear.
So we've got Royal Knights. If you haven't checked out my profile from this week, please do check it out. I've already thought of different tweaks I'd probably make since making the video, which I think is a reflection of just how toolboxy the deck is, right? The more you test, the more you like play with it, the more like sort of things you can kind of see and gain perspective into. I think this one here is a pretty good and standard build. I think a couple things to point out is we see it right off the bat, the Gotsumon that prevents players from playing out Digimon by effects. It's really there for the mirror matchup, because this prevents your opponent from being able to do the like kind of mirror Omeka play, where if you bring them down to 1 or less security, they can go ahead and play Omeka out. Also prevents like Cool Boys from spitting out Omekas and such too. So I think still a very, very good option for Floodgates against Royal Knights. I think if I had to pick one, Gotsu versus like a Solarmon, I almost would prioritize Gotsu. Because the play out via effect is such a key part of Royal Knights. You know, there are ways to deal with the Solarmon, like reducing play cost. Where Gotsu, I feel like it's a good late game, like seal the deal sort of play. Right? Where like, you're gonna go for it, you just slam down a Gotsu and be like, if you can't deal with it, then you've kind of sealed the deal.
Right.
So I do think too, we're gonna be seeing a lot more of Gotsu in builds as we move forward. I think the kind of Genku Jessamon package is pretty standard. I do like Leopard. I know a lot of Listen JP actually weren't running Leopard. And I touched upon this in my deck profile too. Being able to play out stuff for a reduced cost is really neat. I also just realized literally like an hour earlier from recording that you can also play out Medieval for reduced cost and play Medieval potentially out for like 3, which is also really, really good for Leopard. And on top of that, being able to just like spam a board of big, beefy blockers is never a bad thing. So I do like Leopard a lot in Royal Knights, and I feel like it's probably gonna maybe get bumped up as the meta moves forward. We'll see. The old BT-13 Alpha also is interesting to me. I know some decks have been like sort of iffy on it. I do see the benefit in running it. I think that's one of the like few cards still that I'm like 50-50 on. Like I'm like, like I see the vision, but I don't know if it's like actually worth it. But this deck did choose to run it. The rest of the package is pretty standard, right? Your Dynast, your Lord Knight, your Or You Can Ace, which is an excellent like removal option essentially for Royal Knights. We see Just GX make another return here as again another very good just removal piece, particularly since you're floating a lot of these red level 6s out on the field. And then you wrap it out, of course, with the 4 Omni X, 3 BT-13 Omni. As I said in my video too, like BT-13 Omni is still a very, very viable win con for this deck. So I think any less than 3, in my opinion, is a mistake. I think you have to run him at a 3 or more of. I don't think you need 4, but I think 3 is like the sweet spot for him.
Sure.
And then again, 4 Cool Boy, 4 Purge, 4 Last Guardian. Like that's pretty self-explanatory there.
The 4 Cool Boy.
Yeah, I think
the 4 Cool Boy and Purges are what's behind Bed's head right now. Keep going, man. Sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the biggest thing to highlight from this deck is just the emergence of Gotsu. You know, I think a lot of JP lists were not running it. I can definitely see us in like the English side of the thing, definitely taking in Omeka, particularly in a best of 3,
right,
where you kind of want that sort of advantage. So yeah, that pretty much sums it up for me.
The way I think about it too, I have to imagine that Gotsu's probably most important time is because you said it's there to counter the Omni X, like the opponent's Omni X play, right, with the Omeka play or whatever.
Yeah,
it works out perfectly because with Or You Can Ace, if you hit a security, you gain 3 memory, which is just enough to just slam down Gotsu, right? So like if you do your whole Royal Knight play, right, you can chip your opponent's security, gain the 3 memory off Or You Can Ace being on board, and then just put Gotsu down and be like, okay, now you can't Omni X me, and I'll just finish the game now.
Right. Exactly.
It's really good. It's very strong. So yeah. I think you covered everything. Nothing else for me to say. I think you're right about Leopard too. I think that the defensive strategy, just giving you a block it blanket blocker to the board is very good. I think
that before we move on here too, I mean, I think because we're starting to get into unification, right? Where we're going to be deck building alongside JP now, as opposed to like previously comparing their builds and then making it our own. Like, I think the big difference that we'll kind of see in sort of these deck building styles is still the best of 3 versus best of 1. Right.
Agreed.
Like in JP best of 1, like you don't really care as much because if you have the potentiality for quick aggressive plays, you just go for it. Like it just makes more sense to do so, which is why I almost think like the like Fire Rocket Lightning Joust variant of this Royal Knights build was a little bit more popular over there. We've seen a lot of comments here on our Royal Knights videos where they're like, yeah, we don't buy this like Fire Rocket version at all. We don't like it. Probably because in a best of 3 format, it's less consistent. Whereas in JP, it's like if you see the nuts, you just win.
Right. Yeah.
So, but
yeah, I have to wonder with unification coming around and worlds and everything. I wonder if we'll move to a unified rule set on games, like if we're going to become a best of 1, especially because I mean, and we've had conversations about this in the past too, during like the yellow hybrid and SecCon days too, where sometimes those games just take way too long. But even now, for decks that like aren't particularly defensive, if they just have enough removal and there's enough back and forth, that it takes so long to resolve effects and like their interactions and everything, the games take longer. There's a lot of ties still nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have to wonder if one day, which I wouldn't mind being best of 1 at this point. I used to not like the idea, but like I feel like the longer I play this game, the more I'm like, you know what? Going to locals and turning a 5-hour night, a 4 or 5 hour night into a 2 or 3 hour night.
My slow brain's gonna have to catch up because I always feel like I'm the player that like round 1 I typically will lose because I'm like feeling out what my opponent wants to do and how they play, and like I might overanalyze things, and then like games 2 and 3 I'm like locked in. I'm like, yeah, okay, this is what they want to do, this is how they're gonna do stuff.
Sure.
So I do wonder how that's gonna affect like play styles too, right?
For sure.
But yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, agreed. All right, scooting on. Pulsemon. Ooh, Pulse baby. I love Pulsemon. This is so it's running a lot of the newer pieces. This is kind of a pretty close to what my list was looking like. To be honest, I was also skeptical about the new Boutmon, so it's interesting to see that they're also on that same sort of train. There's one card behind Ben that's just one yellow scramble. That's it. As for the rest of the deck, Shivamon Ace is a very strong card. It's very, very powerful. It's a good ace for the deck. Being able to just like suspend and give a DP boost, and when someone swings into something is really good, just because you can potentially just have them, potentially delete their own Digimon. And then, the 3 or fewer effect where, one of your opponent's suspended Digimon is sent to the bottom of the deck is really, really nice. Bottom decking is still just one of the strongest forms of removal in this game. It's like, the one place that no deck has access to at all, unless they, trim all the way down there. Some interesting tech choices. The Paladin mode ace I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
If you remember back when I played this deck a lot, I was actually on the burst mode ace version. Because of all your Leon Alexanders being yellow Tamers, you usually got pretty good value out of burst mode ace, and it worked really well. You got pretty good damage out of it. So I have to wonder how that's going to do, especially because we see Shine getting support. I wonder if that card's going to come back at all.
Oh, baby.
And we also, just in general, for like any yellow decks, that he's a very good level 7 ace card. Yeah, otherwise pretty standard stuff. Namake's are really good. Level 4. The new Boutmon is really, really nice. Or not Boutmon, Bulkamon, or Bulkamon. Jeez, I cannot talk tonight. I take that back. Probably the most interesting thing to me is the new Kazuchi.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was about to say.
Using that over the SR Kazuchi from BT-17 is really neat and interesting. The Fortitude is cool, and I think it makes sense because I believe with the new AG and Leon, whenever one of your Digimon are played or Digivolves, you Mind Link with them. So I believe you can reactivate your Fortitude right away if you lose the stack.
Right.
And like, to be fair, like the new Kazuchi's not bad, right? Like the Inheritable to Recover one isn't terrible, but it doesn't really matter for this because you're never gonna be a Fenrilooga. I mean, really, he just suspends things, and you may attack. So I have to wonder where, because I feel like there's still probably more value in the old SR Kazuchi.
I know our buddy Josh Umblum. I was testing against we're playing for funsies, and he was like whipping out the Pulsemon deck, and he was utilizing the old the old Kazuchi.
Yeah.
And we were talking about it. I feel like I agree with you. I feel like the old Kazuchi's just slightly edges out this new one. But yeah, I mean, I think both have their benefits.
Yeah.
I'm not well versed enough in Pulse to be like, oh,
Fortitude,
for sure this is better,
Yeah, Fortitude's a strong effect. I just think that the old Kazuchi does more on his own than this one does, because this one really just locks down a Digimon or a Tamer, which is still good, but I don't know. I feel like the DP reduction you get off the old one is really, really nice.
I like the DP reduction better as well.
Yeah, same. But yeah, but still, I mean, they top with it. It worked, so yeah, they were cooking. And it's cool to see Pulse doing things. It's cool to see Pulse get a top, even if it's just at a local level. Yeah, I'm probably at some point gonna update and put Pulse back together, because I do love the deck. It's very fun, and I think it does have potential. It just needs a few more, just less fair pieces. That's it. It needs to stop being a deck that's now being just kind of devised as a. Oh, we lost Ben. We're back. Okay, sorry. Discord decided.
Discord
to
updates
itself.
Go wild.
Yeah, it goes. It decided to shit itself. Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, Pulse. It's cool to see it. Needs a few less fair cards, I think, to make the deck really good, and hopefully they stop making it just ride on Fenrir's coattails and make it its own thing again. I would like to just see an SR Kazuchimon that's just Kazuchi and Pulse, and not being, passenger to the Fenrir train.
Speaking of the Fenrir train.
The Fenrir train. Hey.
Hey.
This is yeah. Go ahead, Brother Bear.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one card we do have missing here is I'm assuming they used the Balmon, the kind of Warp Evo Balmon, BT-14 one.
Yes. It's my fault. I forgot to
So
put that
no,
in
no,
there.
you're fine. You're fine. You're fine.
Whoops.
But yeah, I mean, I think this is an interesting one that we did want to highlight mainly because we are seeing the new restriction of BT-17 Fenriloogamon here. And it is interesting because they are still finding ways to utilize the old Takemi Kazuchi and the Kazuchi package to kind of go along that route. I feel like I myself, when I've like looked at the list, have always gravitated to something very similar, but just kind of wasn't as confident in my ratios.
Mm.
But I think what we're seeing here is sort of a reinsertion of the old Soul Lugarmon, which does synchronize pretty well with the old Fenriluga and kind of going about that wideboarding strategy.
Yeah.
Which again, I think about outside of Soul Lugar, like the old like level 4s and the level 3s still pair very, very well with BT-14 Fenry. It's just you have an alternate game plan here, hence why you have, like, for example, the Fenry Take Ace as a potential ace threat. You have the Kazuchis there again. The new one is just better for the Fenry train compared to the older one. But I think this is a very decent balance of like BT-14 Fenry and like still trying to utilize that Takeme Kazuchi package because the deck still does a pretty good job at setting up your trash, being able to like draw and discard. You still run your Hell Lugars, you still run your Analog Youths.
Yeah.
The Code AG and the Hacker Judge are still like again really really good tamers for the deck. I think a good upgrade to like old BT-14 AG. And you still run the Memory Setter Code AG as well. So again, I think pretty good skeleton of Fenry, just sort of more warped to like if you need to use that alternative win con of like wideboard and like do like big alliance checks with old Fenry. You still have the like it still has a very good line to do so, but you still give yourself that option without like taking that package out with the old Takemi line.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I have to imagine that the main way this probably works now is you just try and gain as much memory back after your Fenry play to just hard slam the Kazuchi.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's probably just what you try and do best. But
right.
Yeah, I think that I know this is kind of a little bit controversial because I know people are still very mixed feelings about the Fenry hit and about Fenry as a deck in general because of how it plays with the memory gauge and everything. The more I think about it, I do think that was the correct hit.
Yeah.
I still think that the secret would have also been a good hit, but I think that hitting the secret makes you lose a lot more value in the card game, or like in the cards in general. I think hitting the card that's like less hard to obtain makes sense. And realistically, I mean that card it's what plays out the Kazuchi that enables the whole strategy, right? So
Right.
I get wanting to not completely kill the strategy, but just reduce its consistency, so that's a bit harder to do. So I think it makes sense. It's smart. Okay, we scooting on. Jessmon, me and Ben are not Jessmon players, to be clear. This build is crazy to me just because of what I've seen from both Josh Umblum, our mutual friend, as well as our very own Jarrell, who's a Jessmon player, and some other like Guther as well, other people that we have that play Jessmon at our locals. You can't see behind Ben's camera, but there's 2 old BT-10 GX and 3 GX Ace. And then you see the rest of the list. The list is, and there's only 3 sisters. So this is interesting because this is what Jarrell's been working with. And Jarrell's been kind of like mulling over, right? Where he's been talking about just taking sister out entirely and just going for like a red OTK thing. He doesn't even have Genkus. He's just purely on the Jessmon train. This is almost like a little bit kind of in between, leaning more towards just going for the line. And it's just, I feel like at the end of the day, no matter what, it's still Jessmon. The way they have designed the top end of this deck is that the top end is so powerful that they know that whenever they make support for this, they have to make it inconsistent. It doesn't matter because if they make it so that you can, if they make it so you can consistently get to your GXs every time, and that you do it very, very well, the deck is going to become worse than Fenrir was, right? Like if you think about it, Fenrir was like the best version of what Jess wanted to be, where you basically just combo your way up to this big level 7 boss monster, but the only difference is that Jessmon still cared about memory. Fenrir didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I remember playing, and I don't want to get too distracted here, but I remember playing like back in BT6 against Jessmon when it was like doing some wonky things.
Yeah.
And then had the starter deck get introduced, and like it started to make a little bit of a comeback. But like BT6 Jess was like sort of like the idea of like go into Savior, do all like play out and spam out a board, do big checks, you go big, right? But like it still took a lot of setup, but the game was slow enough and the game wasn't crazy enough where that strategy could still be implemented, because you could still search, you could still look for your pieces, you could still take the time to like do what you needed to do without worrying about like the counterplay.
Yeah.
Here the meta has like evolved exponentially,
right?
Yet Jess is still in this like realm of like, I need like at least 4 or 5 turns on a good day to set up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like you just it just feels so bad like this ratio here too, right? Like just to highlight this deck, because I know we've been doing a lot of like theory talk here.
You have actually
12,
16. You have 16.
You have 16 searchers, but you're
19?
still running 4 level 4s. Like that scares the bejeebas out of me.
Yeah.
And 4 level 5s. If you're going into like this, like, let me build up a tribal, like, how do you, I don't know. It's just my personal play style, which is like I'm getting used to it because like decks like Sakuya, for example, right? Like they're running like 6 level 5s now, and like 7 level 4s, and like 9 level 3s, which is like an unusual ratio for me. But even then, like 4 level 4s and 4 level 5s on a deck that you're banking on climbing up to like your big level 7 boss monster, feels really scary.
No, it is. I mean, I agree 100%. That's why I don't play Jess either, because you see how inconsistent I am when I have some of the most consistent decks in the game at my disposal, and I still manage to brick or miss like a 4 of in the deck, and I haven't seen any of it because I'll have 3 of it in security somehow. So I will never touch Jessmon because that deck will not. It won't. It won't work.
I will try to play it, and I'll probably just rage quit and be like, yep,
yeah, that's how I would be
done.
too. It's but yeah, I mean, like as you can see, they try to maximize their search consistency here to try and find the few pieces they have. I will say, I think that the cool thing with Jess is that because it's gotten so many iterations of support now, there has been multiple different ways to build the deck. Like it's one of those like big boss monster strategies that like it doesn't have like this is clearly the best way and the one way to do it. Because you see people that all play Jessmon all arguing about what's the best way to do it, right? Everyone thinks that their way is the best way, and there honestly might be one, and some people might just be stubborn. I'm not gonna pretend to know Jess enough to weigh in too much into that convo. I just know what I see.
Sure.
From the Jessmon players that are around us. But I think it's cool that it can spark that debate, that it can create those conversations as a deck, and I do one day hope that they do try and move away from the sister strategy and then just like figure out a way for this deck to be just some level of a bit more consistent so that people can enjoy it, so long as it doesn't become overbearing on the meta and just become an OTK monster that just doesn't die. That'd be my only thing that I would have a problem with realistically.
Side note, this is completely unrelated to Jessmon.
Sure.
But as we're like
also Gurimon is the egg on this deck as well. It was the BT-8 Gurimon, I believe. So apologies for not having that in there.
I'm going on TCG Player, like just like looking up like card effects and stuff and reading.
Right.
BT-17 Pulsemon.
What about it?
Is $21. Alt art.
Yeah. Cool. That's good. That's good for me. I'm glad I got them when they were $5.
God dang it.
This is why.
But anyways, I digress.
little mini market watch for you guys. But yeah, so that's Jess.
This is how much I care about Jessmon.
No, I kid. Dude, you better watch out for Josh. You better watch your back. He's gonna come for you. But no, Jess is a cool Digimon. It would be cool if he could be a little bit more consistent in the card game.
Yeah.
All right.
Agreed.
Moving on. We have a little bit of a special one at the end here. We're not going to linger too long. We're jumping over to Twitter real quick. Thank goodness. Nothing inappropriate on here. Nothing I have to blur. We have a 3v3 Tamer battle event that happened on March 19th. First place was Team Dim Sum.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's my team.
Over at Brune's Gamer Tavern. And they were doing a cool theme of all playing Tamer's decks. So here's the boys right here. Congrats to these guys. As you can see, they were each playing Tamer's deck. So first things first, we have the Terrier deck here. I won't linger too long. Behind Ben is just 2 of the ST Lopmon and 2 of the Memory Blocker Terriermon. They have blinged their Terrier deck out, so props to them. It looks gorgeous. It is very, very cool. There's only a couple of I think they're missing like what? One of the the special foil ST Rapids.
Yeah.
I guess they could go for the gold rapid, like the gold rapids. But that's you know, that's a bit wild. That's a bit nutty. But otherwise, I mean, it's cool. It's really cool. Also, the old Izzy is in there as well. I don't remember what that Izzy does.
It's a good card. When you suspend opponent's Digimon, you gain a memory.
Oh.
You suspend a crap ton in Rapids. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to just make your plays a little bit more efficient, particularly now with how like there's suspending on like Evo or on play and stuff. Like, it's not a bad idea at all.
They're not running any Willis, which is really interesting.
It is interesting. And Bunnies has been a deck I've been like kind of curious in. I really love Rapid X as a card.
Yeah.
I think the idea of Rapid X is super cool. My buddy Shamoon, or our buddy Shamoon, is also a huge Terrier guy. So like, I play against him a lot, and it's like I see it a lot, and I do enjoy it. And it's been a deck that I've been like meaning to like put back together and kind of update. And this definitely does a good job at it for sure. Like, this is a very solid build.
Yeah. I think Terrier is probably one of the better green decks out there. We don't really have too many good green decks lurking around the meta right now. At least not that I could think of. I'm with this Bloom. And then Terrier, I can't even think of another one that's like a green deck.
Zafaga.
I guess Zafaga, yeah. But that one's like, that's such a skill like entry to like try and actually consistently top with it.
Yeah.
It's hard. But still, you're right. It is a good deck. Especially with Medieval Gallant, which we see 3 of in this one as well. But yeah, it's just cool. You know, Bunnies is really cool. Terrier's always going to be a Digimon that's going to get support, so I think it's an archetype worth investing into if you are somebody who's interested in it. Even if it's not very good right now, there's a very good chance that anything could come out for it that will be broken. You know, Tamer's is like one of the most fan favorite animes out there, so you know, and he has ties in with the O2 kids as well because of the movie, so he'll probably just only see more support and plenty of it. Moving on to the next list, and here we have a Sakuya list, which, speaking of your horrors, 7 level 4s, and then 6 level 5s. 7's a bit better. That's actually a bit more than I feel like we've been seeing. I think it's really cool how we've been seeing with Sakuya the usage of, first of all, Valder Arm being tossed in there now to mix it up with the Ruin modes. This was actually running one of the old BT-10 Miko modes, which is interesting. Or maid modes. And then the Starmon, the Nature Spirit Starmon that's been added in there.
I like this a lot. I've actually put this into my build recently as well. Really good for the on play and on Evo. But I think more importantly, Barrier is a very good inheritable for Sakuya because it makes you a little bit more like, yeah, I'm okay swinging. Because before you're like, I'll swing, but like, ooh, I might die.
Yeah. At
least now with Barrier, you kind of have that option of like, okay, like I could swing if I do end up like checking something bigger than I am. Sure, we'll Barrier, keep my Sakuya out on board.
Right.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, agreed. The cards behind Ben, by the way, are just 2 yellow memory boosts. They're just the alt-arts from the little binder set. But yeah, otherwise, pretty standard Sakuya build, I think, from what we've been seeing. That new Rika is so much gas for the deck. She is insane. Insane.
She's like almost like Cool Boy to X Antibody is for like Sakuya.
Yeah, agreed. She's
like being able to search in memory and
it's kind of like what Cool Boy did in BT-9 for X Antibody like strategy, especially like, you know, just alpha. in general, she just like she hit the game for Sakuya, and it was just like it was like jet fuel. It just hit.
Yeah.
And she just skyrocketed. She is such a good card.
Like 2 things I will point out real briefly here is the choice of Viximon.
Yeah.
This one we are seeing the old EX Vixie that lets you draw when you use an option compared to the new Viximon that lets you just return a plugin from trash at the end of your turn. I think this has become, I think the more I see and like study lists and like the more I talk to people about Sakuya, I feel like it ends up just being personal preference and what you feel more comfortable with. I don't think there's like a clear cut, this one is better.
Sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong, chat, but like I feel like I like the other one just because that fits my playstyle a little bit better. Definitely see why people like this one more. I think it's just up to you. The second thing I'll point out too is they are running the full package of the BT-20 Sakuya. I was on that train initially, and then I kind of swapped to the, I think, 2-2 of the BT-17 Sakuya and the BT-20 Sakuya because that one's decent. I think I've seen more people run it.
It's got protections, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's got protection, so you can't be bounced or returned to hand or deck, I believe, until the end of your turn if you use an option card, which just helps your Sakuya stick, which is sort of the whole focal point of this deck, and then being able to utilize your Valders and your Ruin modes. So just something to keep in mind. It is a very skill expressive deck. A lot of like expressiveness in the builds too. Some folks are running 4 plugins. Some folks are running, I've seen up to 6 plugins. So you can really make the deck what you want to make of it. So yeah, it's an interesting place that Sakuya's in right now.
Yeah, for sure. It's something to note here too is that the Sakuya player is actually the only person who went undefeated the entire event. The Terrier player lost first round to an Invisi, and then the Gallant player lost last round to an Imperial, but everyone else managed to take it up. But yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think
it played against Angels. That must be
the Chaos,
miserable.
Gigacy, and Angels. So it went through the ringer. It had to prove itself. So yeah, I mean it's just cool for Sakuya to finally be doing things, and it's not just Tau Loop.
Yeah,
that was my biggest thing. Is I just wanted Sakuya to be good, but for it not to just be Tau Loop, because Tau Loop's dumb. Right. Yeah. It's a silly gimmick, which I think gimmicks are cool, but they get old, and I like to just see something a little bit more in vain for like what the deck was like trying to be, right? So
right.
It's cool. It's just nice to see Sakuya doing things. And speaking of Gallant, though, last but not least, we have Gallantmon here. The cards behind Ben is just one of the EX4 Guilmon, the Rush Guilmon. Otherwise, you can see the rest. Pretty standard Gallant build, I think. I think the most notable things I'm seeing right out the gate are the 4 starter deck Growlmon. That does stand out. We only have 2 of the Growlmon that are spitting out Tamers for free. Which the Takuyas are pretty standard. The 1 of the BT-17, 2 of the BT-20, 2 of the BT-19, and 2 of the EX2. I've seen that sort of split before. Usually you run 5 Takatos now, or Takatos now. Sorry, dude, I can't talk tonight. This is rough. I'm going through the ringer. 2 Wargirl X's, a little bit low for my preference, but I don't think it's something you can't get away with.
I mean, you're only running 6 total level 5s in general, which to me feels again scary, but
you have a lot of search. I mean, they are running 4 of the Magnamon X. They run 3 of the BT-19 Gil. 4 EX2 because it's just one of the best. The 4 Wargrowl from BT-17, that's also a choice to me. That one's interesting. Because we see a lot of people running usually like majority BT-12 with like 1 or 2 EX3 for the free Tamer or Guilmon play. But the BT-12 just being able to let you warp and speed up your aggression in your plays is usually pretty good. But aside from that, but I don't think the BT-17 is bad by any means. I think it's just it's definitely a preference.
It's a choice.
Yeah. It's just one we're not seeing too much right now. Otherwise, standard trainings, scrambles, 3-3 split for BT-17, Gallant and Gallant X from EX. What was it? Is it EX8 it was from? Yeah. Jeez, we're so far in the EX sets now. My brain's starting to melt. 1 BT-13 Rush Gallant is in there. 2 Omni X's, which is interesting.
Might as well.
2 Omni X's and also 2 Protoforms. I feel like we've been seeing, at least over here in the English side of the card game, a lot more BT-9 X Anybody for people just to kind of swing with Blitz and then go into Gallant X. off the swing, and I would have assumed something similar to be being done to like try and warp into Omni X there, but the protoforms are neat choices. So a little bit of an unorthodox build, but it's still gallant, still cool.
This kind of reminds me of similar to when we saw like builds like Shine and Mirage back in like BT-13, BT-14 era, where you kind of waited in the back to do your big play, right? And like any sort of preliminary chip damage was more so just, for example, utilizing your Guilmon or the Digimon eggs to draw one for extra draw, similar to like what Wanya was to those decks like Mirage or Koro was for Shine.
Right.
And you kind of just like use your low end stuff to search, hence the Gil X's, the Guilmons that search, the Growl X's that search and draw. And then I think, you know, if you're using that strategy to maybe stay in the back, that's where the starter deck Growlmon probably gives you a little bit more bang for your buck, because if you're waiting for that like big stack play, the memory gain off of the deletion probably helps you just string along stuff that much more compared to the other one. And then you just kind of go for your big play with Gallant X, hence the War Growl with giving you check +1 and restand, yada yada. So I see the vision. The protoform, I agree with you. It's interesting. Like I feel like I'd even like,
especially
personally when I was building, like I personally have done like a 1-1 split, you know, at least just to kind of give me the option of like, well, if I need a protoform, we do that. If I need an X swing, we do that with the BT9. But yeah,
I have to wonder if the I say the Hexaball. I have to wonder if the Hexaball is what came up for them actually, because of the
they lost to Imperial.
They lost to Imperial, or even the Davis, right? The Davis Ken stripping it like 2. So I have to wonder if that was the game changer for them there. They were just kept on getting their sources stripped and weren't able to do the things they needed to do. But yeah, we have yapped long enough. This has been a longer video. But you know, we didn't have a deck check last week, so hopefully a little bit more longer format you guys enjoy. But yeah, you know, cool deck list. If, as per usual, if there's lists that you want us to go over, let us know in the comments down below. Please tell us. We will do our best to try and find them. We'll try and find winning lists for those archetypes to kind of cover and go over, give our thoughts on them. Otherwise, if you guys have watched this far and you haven't already hit the like button, you should do that. It was pretty cool. It'd be pretty proud of you to do. And if you aren't subscribed, you should do that too. And if you want to become a member and get early access to this content along with our members' first tech profiles, please consider doing so. It'd be pretty nice to have you along for the rides. And we also we yap with our members a good chunk. Members chat's been popping off thanks to Brandon and Ryan especially. But yeah, so I think we're gonna head out. That's about it for us. And Ben, if you'd like to give the closing words, please.
Yeah. No, as TJ said, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for showing us all the support, and hopefully we catch you on that flippy flip. Bye bye.